welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Nonprofit Show. One of my faves of all time, Katie Warnock, joining us, the CEO and founder of Staffing Boutique. Wow, you and I have a lot to talk about because the labor market has been just kind of turned upside down, and it's happening real time as we speak. So we thought we would bring you in and kind of jump on this issue of job changes, and we'll get into this a little bit more. But Katie Warnock, I cannot think of anyone else better than to have this conversation with. Welcome.
Let's do it. Thank you.
Hey, we are so grateful to our sponsors, and one of them includes the amazing Katie Warnock. During COVID, I've told this story several times, but during COVID, everything was turned upside down. My office phone rang, and I'm like, oh my God, somebody's calling. And it was Katie Warnock. And she had heard about the Nonprofit Show, and she's like, I'm calling from New York. I want to get on your show, blah, blah, blah. And it was like, wow. And so she really made a contact and made something happen and magical for us. So we are eternally grateful for the folks at Staffing Boutique, along with the American Nonprofit Academy, Bloomerang, your part-time controller, Third Sector Company, Nonprofit Thought Leader, and Fundraisers Friday. I'm Julia C. Patrick, one of the co-hosts here, joined today by myself, because when I get Katie on, I don't want to share her with you because I always have so many questions. For the amazing Katie Warnock, CEO and founder of Staffing Boutique. You can learn more about Staffing Boutique and their work in the nonprofit sector at staffingboutique.org. Okay, I got all that out of the way because I'm dying to talk to you about this concept. We have a new administration. In less than 2 months, we've had strong funding cuts. On my way into the office this morning, NPR was reporting that 85% of the USAID budget was cut, meaning all of those people that have any contracts directly with USAID or just in general are losing their jobs and more.
Sure.
What are you seeing in just the overall specter of this?
Yeah. So what I'm seeing is a lot of the prestigious organizations that I've worked with since the beginning of my career, like the IRC, Amnesty, these big international orgs, that if you look at their staff, they don't have much turnover. They have very high level VPs of philanthropy, major gifts people that have been there for, definitely since 2005 and now. And I am seeing them looking for jobs. They were relying a lot on USAID, and their positions have been cut. So it's a little scary seeing resumes that are so with such good job tenure on them, now all of a sudden looking for jobs. So I'm definitely seeing that. Some of my organizations, are doing fine. These changes aren't affecting them, but those doing international work that do rely on a lot of the government funding, just in general, besides USAID, are really hurting right now and laying off for sure.
Wow. That's, first of all, fascinating to get your perspective on the tenure of these executives and staff folks. It seems like everywhere else in the nonprofit world, Katie, we have this like revolving door and we don't see that tenure growing up. Very interesting to hear that. Do you have any reasons why you think that might be, that these folks have more of a tenure position?
Sure. I think that when we talk about the sector just in general, and you're looking at job tenure, when you talk about international organizations that are getting so much government funding, people don't leave. They're really nice jobs. They have good benefits because they are such large organizations. And you see that also within foundation world, especially higher ed or in hospitals. Those are typically the pieces of the sector that tenure stays the same. People don't jump jobs much because they are getting all the warm and fuzzy feelings from doing good work for a nonprofit, but getting a lot of the benefits of working in corporate when we're talking about healthcare, salaries, and time off. So, it doesn't surprise me at all, in terms of the fact that they've been there so long. They're probably making, salaries close to 300 to 400 grand for these VP level and director of major gifts. So I wouldn't leave, for what? And if they're international organizations, quite frankly, a lot of them are probably still remote.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, I think this is fascinating, Katie, because, and thank you for kind of level setting this for us, because I don't think a lot of folks would understand this. If you're running, let's say, an animal welfare organization in Middle America, you probably don't understand or know anybody doing that heavy international work. And so you just think, well, the ecosystem is the same. You work for a nonprofit, it's the same. So I really appreciate you helping us to kind of understand what that might look like.
Yeah, and I think being here in New York, we do know a lot more of international organizations. So many people have headquarters here. The ability to just fly quickly over to, Asia or Europe or even South America is pretty easy from New York. So that's why we do have so many headquartered here in New York City in Midtown.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. Well, let's talk about understanding, you've helped us to understand kind of what the situation is. Now, let's say you've been working for one of these organizations and you are all of a sudden having to look for a job. And what is it that you need to do? And so we're going to really focus on this conversation today about what that might look like, because for a lot of these folks, it's been a while since they've searched for a job, right?
Yeah, for sure. So, this is laid out pretty easy with what you've done here with the deck, but, an updated resume. So, go find that old resume and update it. If you're a fundraiser, monetize it. We want to see in the first 2 bullet points exactly what type of revenue you are raising, what you're bringing in, what your portfolio looks like, how much foundation money are you raising, how many government contracts, what was the value of those contracts, what were you handling, and then, corporate support. Or, if it's individual donors, what were you closing? How much were those gifts? How often? What was the budget of your development department, et cetera? We want to see those numbers if you're a fundraiser. I think sometimes we don't monetize our resumes. If we're coming from fundraising, we typically just do that in finance, but in fundraising, it is so important. So again, just get your resume going, update it, monetize it. Don't save it as resume 1, because so many people do that. Save your resume, your name, first initial, last name, and 2025. So that this is your newest version. I say that because from the world of staffing or recruiting or HR, these job banks, if we have 10 resumes that say resume 1, so, and we're uploading them into our database, it just makes for our filing a lot easier. So put your name or first initial, last name, and what year it is. That'll also keep your records, organized for when you're going back to find your resume again. You could search it in your documents on your computer. So get your updated resume going. One thing I say is, Word documents and PDFs are the most user-friendly when we're talking about recruiting software or CRMs. So anything fancy, anything in a Google Doc, anything that's coming in like via Canva or some sort of fancy resume software, it just doesn't work. We don't need a fancy graphic for a fundraising resume or a nonprofit resume. No pictures. It's just not professional in this profession, number 1. And 2, they don't come over correctly when we're talking about CRMs. So that's why you want to keep your resume simple with a PDF or a Word document. It's user friendly for all the CRMs that are out there. It's a really easy, basically upload for an HR perspective sake, and organizing, internally. I know that I'm saying this, but to be honest with you, we had a major gifts job that we got over 400 applicants for. I spent the entire past 2 weekends getting every single one of those resumes into my software because they came in through LinkedIn Recruiter and I wanted to capture them and put them into my database. Any resume that came through that was not in Word or PDF did not go into my database because it doesn't come over. The fields are just left blank. So even if you have your name in a fancy graphic and then the rest of the stuff is correctly formatted, your name won't come over with your phone number, so it throws off the entire formatting of what a resume will then look like into a CRM. So I really can't emphasize the importance of that enough. So that's the resume. LinkedIn, you should be on it, especially if you're doing fundraising. Update it, get a picture going, tap into your network, go on there every day. I sit on LinkedIn constantly. I'm constantly looking people up, where they are, who did they work with, where did they used to work. I'm trying to find common ground in both my candidates and my clients. So get on LinkedIn, update your profile. Doesn't need to have your resume on it. I don't like that, even if you are looking for a job, but beef it up, make sure that you have your experiences working in the sector, get those dates correct, link them to the companies or organizations that you worked for. There is something on LinkedIn that you can put in your settings that is open to work. And that for anyone that is on the hiring side, whether it be a staffing firm or an organization that is utilizing the tools of LinkedIn from a recruiting perspective, they can reach out to you pretty easily. So opening yourself up to network. In terms of a portfolio, it really, it depends on the job, what that portfolio is going to look like. Obviously, if you're a grant writer, having any sort of grant writing documents that you've done, past grants, you can obviously hide sensitive information. If you've done annual appeals and you have those things, put those into your portfolio. I think that those are always a good bet too.
Interesting. This is a lot more robust than I would have thought. And I appreciate you pulling all this together for us, because for so many people, to start where you began our conversation, if you've had tenure with an organization, you're not going to have these readily available, right?
You haven't done it since 2005.
Yeah, you're going to have to reestablish. And I think it's fascinating, just the technology alone. Didn't have LinkedIn in 2005, right?
No, I think it started in 2006 or 2007. So yeah, no, you got to get yourself on LinkedIn. And then in terms of the references, I would just put like a Word document together, maybe 4 or 5 people that you've worked with in a professional setting, email address, phone number, where you worked with them, what their role was to you. And I would also give them a heads up. Reach out to them. Hey, I'm about to embark on a job search. You may get a reference check from me, and I added you as a reference. Please do that, because we have done references where the people do not give good references. So you want to make sure that the person that you're listing knows that you're listing them and will say good things about you. But just a quick little document that you can shoot over so that you're not retyping an email every time someone is asking you for a reference.
Smart. And you think 4 to 5, you said, or 4 to 6?
I think it's safe, because I do find that references do not call back quickly. So it allows them to cast a wide net. And then if 3 or 2 call back, we're good to go and they can proceed with an offer.
Okay, awesome. That's really good advice, because again, it's kind of a new day for that. Okay, so we've got our preparation. We've really tried to kind of get our tools ready to go in our toolbox so that we can embark upon this. You talk about leveraging your network, and I find this really fascinating, because especially for some of these folks that have worked in international work, or they've been part of a government or larger agency, is their network just going to be everybody else that's out of a job as well?
I don't think so. I think that you really have to look at what your board looks like, and then your high level donors. When it comes to networking for me in my profession, I always say I need to know rich people, and people are like, why? And I'm like, I need to know high net worth individuals. Why? Because typically, if someone is a high net worth individual at this point in their career, philanthropy is a big part of their life. So they're probably sitting on a board, or there are organizations that they're regularly donating to them. And those are people that I need to know. And if I network that way, it tends to get me where I need to be. So, it's not just about other people that are laid off, but, old employees that might still be working. Again, board members are huge, and high level donors.
I think that's really interesting, because I would have never thought to connect back to that part of your world, or that part of your life in a job search. And I find that fascinating, and I don't know why I never thought of it, but yeah, it's really smart.
And be honest, like, hey, I'm starting a job search. Would you mind jumping on a Zoom with me or meeting me for coffee, just so I could pick your brain a little bit? I'm thinking about what the next step in my career looks like. Maybe you can help. Maybe there's another organization that you donate to. Maybe there's another organization that you sit on the board with. Do you have 15, 20 minutes for me to chat with you? be honest, it's not a big deal. People love to do that. And especially that we have the ability to do it on Zoom, it makes people so much more accessible.
Yeah. I think that's just genius. I think that's such a smart thing. And I think too that, your point is well taken about if you're at that season of your life where you are doing a philanthropic leadership aspect, generally it's not just one, right? People who are
Yeah,
on board are generally on many other boards and doing many other
exactly.
things.
Exactly. Or they're
And
donating at other organizations. They know people.
yeah, exactly. When we talk about leveraging our network, it's an interesting aspect because you talk about joining groups on LinkedIn and Facebook, and then attending AFP meetings and other events. This might seem like a thing that's tough for people when they're no longer with an organization
Yeah.
and then going back out into an organization of organizations. Talk to
Mhm.
us about that because you're so good and you're so strong at networking.
I hate it, but I network a lot, and when I first started working, 20 years ago, I had sat in like a networking, I don't know if it was like a class or a group or something, but one of the whoever was giving it was basically like, if you walk away from one event meeting one good contact, it's
Yeah.
better than chatting with like 20 people. And that's always stuck with me, right? So when I go to a place, especially if I'm alone, because I usually am alone, I kind of find my wingman or wingwoman and I stick with them and I revisit them throughout the night or whatever we're doing, right? So I always have that one person to go back to. And if I meet 5 other people, that's great, but at least I met one good connection and I stay in touch with that person. And I have so many people that I've done that with. So, getting out there. And I think that especially right now, like current times we're talking about, there's no shame in it. Like this change in administration has really thrown a curveball into, I, I would say what I didn't predict what was this coming with this new administration in terms of what was going to happen with these layoffs and how it would trickle down to the sector. So get out there and say, I'm one of the ones that it was cut off and I'm here to network. Who do you know? What are we doing? It's a little awkward, but at the same time, if you are going to an AFP or a woman in development or anything with like Chamber of Commerce or association specifically for the organization type that you're working for, you're going to meet people that have similar perspectives to you. So it's probably going to be a fun night, if anything,
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. And I think, sometimes when we feel emotionally beat up, that it's just so easy to withdraw. And so it's hard to lean in and go to networking events, especially early on. But
Yo, I had 2 networking events last week. One was a dinner. I didn't get home till 10, and then I ate an 8 a.m. breakfast. And let me tell you, when my alarm went off at 5 a.m. for an 8 a.m., I was like, I do not want to do this. Like, I can attend this via Zoom, but I was like, put it together, like got up,
yeah.
I was in the city by 8 a.m. and I made it work, and to be honest with you, both events were really good and I'm happy that I went to both. So, it sucks in the moment, you're
Yeah.
probably at the part of your life where getting dressed, putting your life together, putting your face on, like it's kind of a drag, even if you're doing it for something fun. So you definitely don't want to do it for work with people that you don't know, but you just got to suck it up and you're probably not going to regret it. I can't sit here and say that I've gone to a networking event and didn't take anything away from any of them,
Yeah. I think it's just a healthy way to go. And I think to your point, it's really hard to push yourself to engage, but then ultimately, it benefits you. And I
Yeah,
think it benefits others.
sure.
You could be that person that somebody comes back and says, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad I went because I got to meet Katie Warnock." Do you know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
I know, I agree.
it's going the other direction. So we've talked about your tools, we've talked about leveraging your network. Let's talk about this aspect. And this is what I'm really interested to get your feedback on because if let's say you've been working in international affairs and all of that's changing, should you stay with the nonprofit missions that you know about and that you're familiar, or do you just open yourself up to different things, given that international work is so different? And what are
Yeah.
your thoughts on that?
My thoughts can go either way, quite frankly. I think
Okay.
that from a hiring perspective, someone that is coming out of an organization so fresh, like if they just got laid off and they have a
Hmm.
similar mission to what you are looking for, I think that that's a slam dunk candidate because
Okay.
they're coming in with a Rolodex of donors that are interested in giving to the same mission that your organization represents, right?
Hmm.
So from that perspective, I think it's a no-brainer to hire someone from a similar mission than what your organization represents. From the perspective of the candidate, they might be at a point in their life where other missions or organizations have come across their desk or they've learned about them through networking that, if you're in a position where you were just laid off, maybe um, follow that urge to learn about another organization or go work in another organization and network openly because you don't know what is going to, hit at this point, right? So there's no harm in interviewing or getting informational interviews and learning about a different organization's mission and how it works and what their board looks like, etc. So it could go both ways.
Hmm. So let me ask you, as a hiring, staffing organization, and you're working and interfacing with hiring managers, your comment about the slam dunk, somebody that knows the environment and it seems to be a strong fit. Is it ever a good idea to find somebody that is from a completely different thing? Let's say they were involved in, humanitarian response, and now they're interviewing for culture and the arts. Do you ever see that is something that is a red flag, or is it something that's positive because you're going to get a different approach?
It's not a red flag, but if you need someone who understands the programs, you're probably going to want to hire from an organization or someone who's done that in a similar organization. If you're talking about just someone who is going to be working doing fundraising, if you know how to do fundraising in XYZ organization, you can probably do it in the arts, right?
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
the approaches and the science behind it, the solicitations, the direct mail, whatever you're doing, the events, that's kind of going to always be the same. The donor base might be different, how your organization actually does it, but at the end of the day, the things that bring in revenue are going to be the same regardless of where you are. But if you do need someone who truly understands the humanitarian programs and how they run and what that looks like, it might not be the best fit.
So I appreciate that comment because I think that kind of helps me to understand how impactful these changes are. And these are some big changes.
Yeah.
We're just starting with, and they're gonna really explode. One of the things that you recommend is to embrace contracting work, and I'm wondering, given this change and all of the lawsuits and how it were on again, off again, contracting, it seems to me, is going to be something that a lot of these organizations look towards to get through this next, several months, several years. What are you seeing on that, Katie?
Yeah, I will say this. I think that, again, I own a temp agency, right? So I always want to push this, but I think that when the economy or the job economy is not set and we're sort of in this weird position, which we definitely are, work still needs to be done. So it might be easier to just say, hey, I have this project. I know that this work is going to be there for definitely the next 6 months. It might be best to hire a temp or a consultant or a contractor, whatever you want to call them, to bring them on to get the immediate needs taken care of while we're all going through this sort of uneasy time. It'll get you through the fiscal year, possibly. And then when you get through this fiscal year, you might say, okay, this work was necessary, and now we can allocate funds in our budget for a salaried position for this person.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that when we're talking specifically about special events, about writing grants, about database work, stuffing envelopes for events, that sort of work, that grinding work that has to be done.
Mm-hmm.
It's always, I think it's the best thing to do. When we're talking about management positions, I wouldn't give that advice. But
Okay.
when we're talking about just again, the nitty gritty work, social media, those sorts of things that can be done remotely, easily delegated to someone, I think going with a temp is a great way to do it.
Okay. That's great advice because I think, I can see somebody in the job market being asked, oh, would you do temp work or contract work? And the first response is, oh, no. I got to be,
Yeah.
so you don't even open your mind up to it, right?
Sure.
You just easily say, you discard it, right?
So
And
I answered that question as if I'm an organization. Let me answer that question as if I am a temp worker. So
okay.
one of the first things that we always ask, are you open to temp work when we're screening someone who's just been laid off for a job, right?
Okay.
And a lot of times someone who is at a higher level in their career making, a higher salary or decent salary and great benefits, they'll say no. And so our job is to sell them on the idea of temp, because when they think of temp, a lot of times people think of like secretaries in the 70s or something.
Right.
We're not talking about that. We're talking about high level work. So it isn't for everyone, because some people, some candidates, some job seekers do need the stability. They need the benefits. They might be the person that is holding the benefits, and you're not going to get that from temping. So it might make sense for that person to stay on unemployment, focus on a job search, and really be diligent about that. However, if you are in a position where maybe unemployment isn't working out for you or whatever, or unemployment will not pay you what you need to live, temping is a great resource for you. It'll keep your skills sharp. It'll keep you in the market. And the nice thing about temping is when we're talking about, can you take someone from humanitarian to go work in arts and culture? Yeah, they don't care, so it's one of those things that it's a quick placement. We can fill a temp job sometimes in 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, and you're starting to earn immediate income. You're getting paid weekly. So, there's not really cons about it unless you need benefits right away.
Right. I love that you've helped us understand that.
Yeah.
Because for so many people, this whole thing is a shock. It's a whole upset. It's a change that nobody saw coming, as you mentioned. And so really interesting, really, really, really interesting. Last but not least, and we don't have a lot of time, but now might be a good time, you advise us, to expand your skill sets with trainings or certifications. Don't just sit home and mope, but see what you can do to learn something new or different. What do you think about this?
Yeah, let's be honest. If you are that person that's been working steadily for 20 years, enjoy it. Go to yoga, take some walks during the day, do all those things. But you have the time. So enroll in some sort of certification. It could be specific to fundraising. It could be specific to nonprofit management. It could be grant writing. If you're not, if you're not in the grant writing world, CFRE, if you haven't had time to do that. If you're HR, maybe doing your SHRM, or what else can you do? You can volunteer, right? So link up, here we have New York Cares. We also have Jersey Cares, which essentially works as a volunteer calendar, which aligns you with different organizations that have posted specific opportunities for volunteer events. So get out there and network outside of what your typical mission would be. So it's a great way to meet people. So I think that, it's not just about a certification, but it's just using your time wisely. It could be a certification. It could be an upskill. It could be something where you're getting CECs or something like that. It could be learning another language, just something to up your resume. Right.
Right. I love that. And I love that you mentioned volunteering, because I think that you can learn so much from volunteering, like about how an organization structures things, right? Not just doing the work, but you could be like, oh, this is how they greet people. This is how they communicate. This is how they steward a relationship. And there's a lot there for us inside the sector to learn from. So
Yeah,
I
and
really,
you get to see the other people that are interested in volunteering at that specific organization. So it's kind of like a boots on the ground, kind of grassroots way to learn an organization without actually working at the organization.
right. I
love
agree.
it. I think it's a great idea. And again, I don't know what resources there are besides Idealists specifically for volunteer opportunities, but here we have Jersey Cares and New York Cares. And you register as a volunteer, you do this like quick little training with them online. They make sure that you're background checked. And then literally, if I want to volunteer just on Saturday and Sunday in Staten Island, in the morning, I get a list of all the opportunities to do that.
Amazing. Amazing. I love that. And I think there are more and more organizations, pardon me, that are more communities that are looking at that. Well, Katie Warnock, you are always a font of knowledge and somebody that I go to. You're my go-to person. What an interesting turn of events in this short period of time. We're going to be talking about this more and more, because this story is just unfolding. And so we're going to start to see even more impacts from these contractual changes. And so I really appreciate you kind of helping us to understand how, if we are all of a sudden faced with a job change or job shift, what are some of the things that we can do? Because I would imagine this has just been a shock to so many people, and they don't, just the beginning of our conversation, they haven't even set their toolbox up right.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone watched Elon Musk on Joe Rogan 2 weeks ago, but he specifically gets into NGOs and the nonprofit work. And, you know, it's not good what Elon Musk says about NGOs. You know, he essentially explains it's a way for, you know, rich people to hide money. And it's not good. So I was like, I felt like I got hit in the stomach when I listened to that,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing it even in you know, communities where, you know, they're funded by bigger funders that come down into a small, you know, community, a rural community. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not just people doing work overseas. I mean, it's filtering down, and that's going to ramp up. So we have a
Sure.
lot more to talk about. I
Yeah.
think as this goes forward, and like I said, you are our go-to gal on this. Katie Warnock, CEO and founder of Staffing Boutique. You can learn more about Katie and her team, staffingboutique.org. And there's just an amazing amount of information and background to Katie and her team. They're real veterans of this. And they've gone through a lot of changes.
Yeah.
They've been able to work with a lot of changes, right?
For sure. I've been in it.
Yeah.
I've seen it all at this point. Like, what's coming? I'm just going to adapt with it, right?
Yeah, I can't. I mean, and that's a wow, what a gift. What a gift to the Nonprofit Show, because you have seen it all, and it's really cool to be able to plug in and get your viewpoints so quickly. So thank you ever so much.
And one more plug, we also just became a PEO, so we can handle PEO services. If you're a small nonprofit and need assistance with that, with payrolling, you can contact me. We work nationally.
Okay, super cool. Well, congratulations.
Thanks.
Congratulations. We've had a lot of great comments that have come in. So many people have thanked you. Somebody just wrote in and said, great call today. Thank you ever so much. You know, we also want to thank our amazing partners, Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, of course, Staffing Boutique, the amazing team over there, Nonprofit Thought Leader, Third Sector Company, Your Part-Time Controller, and Fundraisers Friday. These are the folks that join us day in and day out. You know, we end each and every episode with this mantra, and today it's really hitting home for all of these people that are seeing their jobs evaporate. And the message is this: to stay well so you can do well.